Hello, welcome to our webinar on an introduction to the new USDA Regional Food Centers brought to you by CFAIR, the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics. My name is Jane Kolodinsky, and I am the CFAIR Program Chair and Professor Emerita at the University of Vermont. It is my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar. Next slide. It is CFAIR's mission to translate high-level research and knowledge to a diverse audience that includes policymakers, elected officials, and federal administrators. When we demonstrate the value of the profession to these groups, the Council increases public appreciation for research, extension, outreach, and academic programs in agricultural and applied economics. Next slide. Before we get started, I want to share some background on today's topic. USDA announced the funding of 12 USDA regional food business centers. These centers will support a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system by providing localized assistance to access local and regional supply chains, including linking producers to wholesalers and distributors. They will also provide technical assistance needed to access new markets, access to federal, state, and local resources, and will assist small and medium-sized producers in overcoming barriers to market access, with a focus on underserved farmers, ranchers, and food businesses. Our webinar today will provide an overview of the centers and provide us a chance to hear from 3 center directors in the West, Delta, and Intertribal Food Business Centers. CFAIR has established a panel of experts to discuss their work, starting with Lillian Breslin. Lillian joined the USDA to serve as Deputy Director of the Local and Regional Foods Division of the Agricultural Marketing Service in February of 2023. Throughout her career, Lillian's work has focused on local and regional food economies with an emphasis on understanding and reimagining new futures for the agriculture in the middle. Next slide. Don Thilmany is a professor of agricultural economics, director of the Northwest and Rocky Mountain USDA Regional Food System Center, and co-director of the Regional Economic Development Institute at Colorado State University. Her research and outreach focus on food systems and rural economic development, primarily focused on opportunities related to value-added food market supply chains. Next slide. Raquel Woods is a farmer, Woodward Farms, LLC, with over 17 years of experience in the Delta, providing training, organizing farmers, and building collaborations among communities, universities, and government agencies. Mr. Woods has demonstrated a history of educating and practicing conventional and sustainable agriculture in the context of managing hunger and increasing food access. Next slide. Johanna Herron has worked for Intertribal Agricultural Council, IAC, since 2022 in a variety of roles, working in American Indians Food Program, the Government Grants Department, and most recently as the project director for the National Intertribal Food Business Center. Prior to joining IAC, Johanna worked for 2 years at the Western U.S. Agricultural Trade Association as the Global Connect Manager. Next slide. Before we start, we wanted to explain how to ask questions during the webinar to make sure that you, the audience, know how to engage with us. During the webinar, you can put questions to one or all of the speakers by typing it into the box in the control display accessed by clicking on the question drop-down as shown on the slide and sending it to the organizer. Next slide. Now, I'll hand the webinar over to Lillian, who'll start us off. Welcome, Lillian.
Hi, thanks. Welcome. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm joining you as the Deputy Director of the Local Regional Foods Division, coming formerly out of higher education, and just really grateful to be here to share a little bit about our program, and then hand it over to our amazing center leads. So next slide, please. So just to put this work a little bit in context, so the USDA's recent investments in the resilience of our nation's local and regional food systems and supply chains are historic, but they also build on decades of thoughtful programming developed in partnership with our ag and food systems partners, which that likely includes many of you on this call. So thank you for all your hard work here. USDA's toolkit of programs and initiatives supporting local and regional food systems have evolved over time and alongside the sector with invaluable learning and innovation along the way. So one might mark the start of the modern era of local regional food systems with the 1976 Farm to Consumer Direct Marketing Act, which is in many ways the founding legislation for all of the work to follow. And this act allowed farmers to sell directly to consumers and allowed an alternative market to commodity production. And as interest and demand for local regional foods has grown, so have USDA programs. We've invested directly in the growth of farmers markets and then other sectors across local regional food systems through our LAMP grants, developing grants and targeted programming to support beginning farmers and ranchers, and through to the establishment of our newer Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. And then finally, the topic of today's webinar, our Regional Food Business Centers program, which is, I would say, emblematic of Secretary Vilsack's framework for food systems transformation. And this program works in tandem with a number of other key grants and program initiatives towards the common goal of creating sustainable, accessible, resilient, and equitable regional food systems. Next slide. So to situate the Regional Food Business Center program within the USDA, it might be helpful to understand AMS, if you'll forgive me for a little bit of sort of USDA taxonomy and sort of where my division in this program sits within that broader portfolio. So if you're new to USDA work, the agency is home to 29 different agencies and offices, and within those, the Ag Marketing Service focuses on the development of international and domestic, including local marketing opportunities. So we are a marketing service, and we often reiterate this is with our partners. While nutrition security work is important or ag production is important, AMS is focused on markets, and you'll see that really is an emphasis of our program. AMS plays a special role coordinating local and regional food systems efforts within USDA, serving as an internal and external convener. We are a researcher and data provider, technical assistance provider, and also a funder for these local and regional food systems. And in this sort of flow chart that you're seeing here, a sister division of my local and regional foods division, our AMS grants division, has 16 different grant programs within it, including those focused on local food systems. The LAMP programs, which you mentioned, local and agricultural market program, has been our primary source for avenue for funding this work. Other programs that may be familiar to those on this call, such as value-added producer grant and EQIP, sit in other realms of USDA, which is why our team's work on coordination and integration is so important. Another closely related program is our newly launched Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure, RFSI program, that also sits in our grants division and is administered in partnership with state departments of agriculture. That RFSI program addresses critical needs we have heard clearly from our stakeholders, particularly the need for right-sized equipment and infrastructure, and for that middle of the supply chain for local farm and food businesses. We also know that states administer these programs and play a critical role in coordinating among local producers, processors, and distributors. So that's a role of that program that we see RFBC is working really in close coordination with. And then that brings us to my home in the local regional foods division. You may have known us as the marketing services division. We have been remodeled, reimagined. It's sort of like a new back to school feel. We've gone from a team of 8 to soon to be 40 in the past year and a half. Our team of ag marketing specialists, grant management specialists, and even a couple of architects work to help small and mid-sized producers, mid-tier food businesses, and their communities gain access to ideas, innovation, and research to grow and sustain productive farm or food businesses operating within what we hope and envision to be a vibrant regional food economy. And for the past 2 years, our team's primary focus and the source of our expansion has been designing and implementing the RFBC program. So that just sort of situates us within this whole system of programs happening. Next slide, please. So this program was authorized through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and the RFA was released in September of 22. And for those of you familiar with government operations, we have moved at a breakneck pace, really thoughtfully, and we're just so proud of the work our team, but also our partners have come alongside us in this journey. Applications were established and submitted in January of 2023. So last year we received applications. They underwent a competitive review and finalists were announced in May of 2023. So we went from the Consolidated Appropriations Act in 21 to now having finalists and agreements signed in the summer of this year. We received 51 total applications. We underwent that competitive review process and 12 finalists were selected. So we have one national center, our National Intertribal Center, which you'll hear from today, and then 11 geographically specific centers. Through that process, we held open office hours where folks can come on and ask questions of our program team to like, hey, is this allowable? How do I understand this part of the RFA? It was a really great part of the process that the team is proud of and we think is indicative of the cooperative and collaborative spirit with which we address this program. Ultimately, $360 million were obligated and awarded through this program. And through that series of 12 centers, we know of 93 key partners and additional 275 collaborators. So this is nested networks of partners working collaboratively to identify and prioritize regionally and within sectors to do this work. Next slide. So what are those centers? So you'll see these are geographic. We have full coverage, not only of our states, but also of our territories. We're very excited to be able to offer these centers and you'll hear from them then. And this map is available on our website. I should note that we did not predetermine, this program did not predetermine the regions. They were self-organized by the lead applicants. And so this allowed regions to define themselves as they understand and work together. Next slide. So what will the RFBCs do? There are 3 pillars of the work, and there's a lot more once you dig into any of these, but if you want to think of this program in a big picture, the centers will provide technical assistance to small and mid-sized farms and food businesses. That includes training. That could be individualized workshops, field days, where folks are getting out and seeing how these markets are being developed, consultations, and other forms of technical support specifically to enhance the viability and market competitiveness of these food and farm businesses. Again, AMS, putting the M back in Ag Marketing Service. We serve as a coordinator, so a key component of our LRFD team's work, but also how we work in partnership with our regional centers is to help coordinate and connect clients and stakeholders, but also the key partners of these networks with that full suite of USDA programmings. So because we have so many different tools, programs, funding, and resources available to food systems, and it can be challenging to navigate, we are aiming to, through this program, demonstrate what it looks like to weave and strategically integrate USDA programs at a systems level, at a systems strategy to help move the needle for regional markets. And this is really based in network-based collaboration. And if there's a theme that comes up again and again in our work with the centers, it is leveraging the power of these collaborative networks through our key partners to get them together. And then in capacity building, we'll be making direct investments into small and mid-sized food and farm businesses through a business builder subaward program, which we know is a key topic and of high interest. We are reviewing implementation plans and anticipate that our centers will have those rolling out the doors in good order. I know Jane's coming on to tell me I need to move quickly, but I'll just hit on this next slide. So we're going to drive economic opportunities. We really leaned into the targeted region-specific values and value chain solutions, identified and worked in partnership with our regional leadership. And through that, we seek to maximize the impact of locally driven investment. Regions know what they need best, and how do we help support them in doing so, in collaboration with USDA team to ensure that full suite of programs is being leveraged to highest and best use. That is complementary and integrating USDA programs, all towards the goal of fostering a more diverse and resilient food systems. And let's skip ahead 2 slides to the final slide. If you want to learn more, we are updating our division's webpage as it is available. We link to each center's website. And again, a lot of the authority and leadership is divested and done in cooperation with the regional centers you're about to hear from. So we encourage you, visit our website, connect directly with your center. And in the spirit of reading Rainbow, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm sure Jane's going to turn it over to our actual center leads.
Thank you, Lillian. I already see questions are coming in. I'd like to remind you to submit questions in the drop-down box. Thank you for that overview of the regional food centers. We are now going to turn our attention to 3 of the 12 food centers. And first, we're going to be hearing from Dawn Thilmany. Welcome, Dawn. Dawn, we cannot hear you. As much as we've been practicing this audience, and we do have 137 people in our audience today, we have been having some audio technical problems, and we'll be working on that right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, let's go with that then. Well, every time they mute me, it doesn't want to let me back in, but I'll make up some time. I'm with the Northwest and Rocky Mountain region. I am Dawn Thilmany, but I am one of about 30 people who are actually collaborating to make the center happen, and I'm simply the figurehead today. So let's move on to our next slide and tell you a little bit more about our team. As the map shows, we represent about 6 teams that cover kind of the Rocky Mountains and northwest of the United States. So this is the map on the left that the USDA has made. And just to show you kind of how we started characterizing what the needs in our community were, we made a map of our underserved farmers, which the USDA will tell you is a very wide swath of different definitions, and we can talk about that more in the questions and answers, but you see in the footnote, we took a very broad lens on who we felt was underserved in this region. Next slide. So once we figured out that we really had a complex, large, and fairly underserved region, we decided to build our center not just geographically, focusing on the 6 states you saw, but we also picked some key themes to focus on that were shared pair points and opportunities for what we saw happening in our region. And to the top right, you see those were building meat supply chain capacity, creating diverse markets for climate resilient ag. A lot of the climate smart monies have come to this region to do some of the production and innovation changes that are needed, but we knew markets needed to come alongside that. We're doing a lot to connect and scale food entrepreneurs in this region. And finally, we're focusing a lot on right-sized investments and infrastructures by our communities. So those first 3 really focus on producers or groups of producers, whereas that last one focuses almost at the community level. Again, we took a very broad lens of underserved stakeholders, not just ethnic identities and size of farms, but also some locations that were persistently poverty challenged, and also farmers with disabilities, because we have a very strong ag-ability program in this region. Next slide. So as you see, we sliced and diced this center lots of different ways to make sure we had the best, most place-based coverage that we could, and very aligned with what Lillian just covered. Our real goals were building relevant regional theme teams and letting that help us build some of those networks and connectedness the USDA gave us a challenge to build. We're trying to create some long-term and deliberative investment pathways. As was mentioned, we have direct control over a biz builder program that we run out this year, but we were really fortunate that at the same time that our centers were rolled out, there was also a resilient food system infrastructure grant program rolling out that is administered by the state departments of agriculture. And this is a good time for me to mention that as we set up our state teams for our center, we most commonly did have our state departments of agriculture helping to lead those state teams. So fortuitously, we were in a really good position to have a voice and work on complementary plans with the programs those states are doing in our region. So finally, you can already start hearing then the language that so much of the first 6 months of our efforts have been spent on really developing and fortifying those partnerships across the states, organizations, businesses, and themes we see as the team that are going to put these programs on the ground. Next slide. So again,
Still can't hear you, Dawn. Something's happening with the audio. It just doesn't like you.
Hello?
Now we can hear you again. No, now we can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, well, I will continue by phone. I'm so sorry about this. I've not had audio problems on a webinar before. Hopefully you got time to read the slide that covers our theme, so let me move on. Since you've had plenty of time to focus on this slide, we'll try to make up some time. Next slide. So I would love to give you a great overview of all of our themes, but I've decided to focus on just one for today for brevity. And this is some of the work, the initial work that our Scaling Food Entrepreneurs team is doing as an example of what we're doing. So we've already been lucky enough to have the states identify some entrepreneurs to put into a Getting Your Recipe to Market class. Commonly those came out of Cottage Foods program, which our region has a great deal of. At the community level, we have a shared kitchen toolkit going out because we've had a proliferation of communities wanting to look at whether having a shared kitchen or incubator kitchen or one of those type of programs would be fruitful for their entrepreneurs as an economic development strategy. In addition, our team is going and actually doing workshops around that shared toolkit to help. Each state will have the option to have one of these workshops. Wyoming will be our next one, where they come in and actually give one-on-one guidance and try to work with community leaders who are looking to put these assets on the ground. And then finally, because we have the Food Innovation Center up in Portland as part of our team, we're getting to integrate into a podcast they've had ongoing for many years, but directly bring the themes of our team into that podcast. So as you can see, we have a real portfolio of activities. Next slide. And the most exciting thing we have coming up is we also have states identify some food entrepreneurs who are definitely looking to scale up. But we're not at the place yet that they were ready to go and do a trade show independently. So over the last 12 weeks, we've had that team working to develop the capacity and skills and confidence of those folks to go to the Fancy Food Show in Las Vegas in just 2 weeks from now, where instead of them going alone and having to man their own booth, there'll be a rotation of 12 of our food businesses from the region, all who will get to man the booth and focus on their product for a while, but also get to walk the show when their product is not being featured, learn from each other, learn from being there. So we're super excited to see what some of our first impacts and outcomes will be for sales and new market connections from those entrepreneurs. Next slide. So again, I would love to talk about all of the people that we have working on themes. But one last one I do want to say, because we do want to emphasize we're looking at the community level, not just the producer level, that we also have that right size infrastructure team. And what they're doing is they're going out and actually trying to meet at every state with those states about what's going on with value chain coordination, sometimes around these regional resilient food infrastructure grants, and help see if there's a TA role we can play and help them identify, frame, and do the feasibility on those projects. Next slide. And last, we just want to talk about, we're also taking a person-place lens where, because we knew tribal nations were a huge component of our region, we've brought into Homa Peak Solutions, and 2 of the partners are listed here, to help us make tribal connections within our region as well. Also knowing we can reach into the partner who's coming next on our panel when we need a national presence, but we quickly identified 2 of the tribal leaders in our region who could help us quickly get to that in our region specifically. So with that, since we lost time because of my technology, let's go ahead and wrap up my region. Hopefully my sound will be working for our Q&A, and I'll turn it back over to Jane. Sorry about that technology problem.
It all worked out. Thank you, Dawn. Now that we've heard from the Western and Rocky Mountain region, we're going to turn it over to hear from the Delta region with Rock Hill Woods.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So the Delta RFBC is located in the heart of the Delta. Clarksdale, Mississippi is where we're located, where the executive director is Don Green, and I'm going to be the project director for this big endeavor. Next slide. So the Delta RFBC territory includes 60% of America's remaining Black farmers and ranchers. We'll also be covering 5 states, which will be Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, and East Texas. The nationwide average of the size of Black operated farms is 132 acres, but more than half are less than that, less than 50 acres across the United States. More than 60% of the Black producers focus on animals, beef, cattle, dairy, hogs, etc. And about 20% grow specialty crops, oil seeds, and grain crops. So the majority of the Black farmers are not vegetable producers. They are traditional row crop growers, which they grow a lot of soybean, corn on a lot of the family land. And we have very small vegetable producers. So those are some of the things that we're working on, is trying to increase those vegetable producers across this state. And that's part of why we're having those biz builders, in order to find those producers that grow those particular vegetables and actually find markets for them to actually help them to grow that out and to start businesses. Next slide. Underutilized acreage. The majority of Black specialty crop farmers plant only a small portion of their available land, from row feet to just a few acres. And the reason for that is because there's a lack of labor, and a lot of the farmers can't afford to buy harvesting equipment to actually harvest crops that's needed. The income is about 7% of Black farms earn more than $50,000 in combined sales and government payments, versus 25% all in the U.S. Farms. So just to get into that a little bit about the history, predatory lending, heirship issues, paying more for inputs, paid less for production, barriers to organizing and acting collectively, limited access to labor, equipment, and markets. So those are some of the things, some of the history that goes along, that happens in the Delta when dealing with a lot of the farmers. And the net result of that is a lack of trust, perceived high risk in building capacities, and resistance to engaging in programs. Because of the history of these things, we have a lot of our farmers that are afraid to go and come to meetings or ask for government assistance to help on their farm because of these practices that have happened in the past. So what we're doing right now is to break down a lot of those barriers right now, working with a lot of the farmers to ensure them that a lot of those practices are not in place anymore, and that you can get assistance from the government to grow your farm out. Another thing, heirship issues. A lot of farmers don't have wills in place, or it may be someone that passes away and leaves the land to all of the heirs, but all the heirs have moved to multiple states, and now the property is just there vacant, and maybe someone's leasing the land, but after all of the heirs tend to die out, there's nothing in place to help those farmers to actually move the land forward to keep it being prosperous. And heirship issues happen. I mean, those are some of the things that we're trying to tear down, a lot of barriers to help farmers with. Also, Mississippi Delta Council for Farm Workers Opportunities. We try to work with farmers in all areas and all aspects of it. Getting paid less for production. A lot of the times the farmers would take their harvest to certain places. I remember we've had several projects that farmers have worked with different entities and received less for the payment of their vegetables. I mean, of course, we know that you can't have a small farmer that's going to deliver you a truckload 3 times a week. That would be impossible. So that's what we're trying to grow those farmers out to do, some of the things, and educate them on how they can become more business savvy and without business builders, because we don't have TA to actually provide that assistance to help farmers grow those businesses. Next slide. Our task is to recruit and train leaders, to train producers, processors, and intermediaries to act collectively. We're going to manage expectations. We're going to be realistic about it, honest about changes that we can help and create. We're going to innovate and inspire new crops, new methods, and new markets. So this is our task that we've been tasked to do when working with a lot of the growers across the 5 states that we're going to be covering, especially our limited resource and Black growers. So we welcome any ideas that anyone may have, any solutions that people may have to offer, because this is one thing we know that this is more psychological when it comes to helping farmers to actually grow from one stage to a larger stage and also to becoming a business. So these are some of the things that we're tasked with, and we look forward to the challenge. Thanks.
Thank you, Rock. We're going to move from the Delta region to the only national center, and that is the Intertribal Food Business Center. And we welcome Johanna.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. You can start on the next slide. So the vision that we submitted to USDA for the National Intertribal Food Business Center is along the same lines as what you've been hearing already, just to provide technical assistance and capacity building opportunities for American Indian and Alaska Native food producers. Next slide. IAC programs, just so you guys have a little background about our organization, it was founded in 1987, and the Intertribal Agriculture Council has multiple programs available across the nation to tribal producers. We have a very robust technical assistance network. This kind of gives you a very broad view of all the different programs we have. The natural resources section in our organization is focused on regenerative agriculture and climate smart practices. And then we have our American Indian Foods Program. That is a trademark that is available for tribal producers to use. It's been around since the early 90s and that program also helps a lot with accessing food markets and development. Next slide. To dig a little deeper into that, we have sort of a holistic approach really to food systems and serving Indian country. And so you can see here kind of the detailed lens on what each of these programs has to offer, and teams that we have on staff, just to basically accomplish our entire mission, which is to provide a unified effort to promote change in Indian agriculture for the benefit of Indian country. You can see in there these programs that we have are very detailed. We have many things to offer, and separate sections that work all in unison, really, to deliver these services and take a really strategic approach to food system change in our group. Next slide. The TA network, if you weren't aware of this is one of the pillars of our organization. This was launched in 2011, and we have technical assistance specialists in each of these regions. Some have a couple if it's a larger region. 40% of all federally recognized tribes are in Alaska, actually over 40, I think. And so we've got 2 technical assistance specialists in that state. And then we also have interregional managers. And we offer a variety of services for all over the nation. Next slide. So for our timeline, I just got a really basic 1-year lens or glance, if you will, on where we're at this year for 2024. Right now, we're in the middle of finalizing our needs assessment. After that happens, it will go forward and get IRB approval and hopefully be launched by the end of first quarter. April to June, we're hoping to be rolling out a pilot phase of our Business Builder Awards and our TA tracks that we're identifying right now. Following that, of course, we'll analyze, evaluate, refine things, and then towards the end of the year, report back to our stakeholder base and launch for the next year. Next slide. Our partner organizations are very important to point out. Our number one partner is our 80,000 farmers and ranchers and 574 federally recognized tribes and the community food systems that they serve. That's who we've been working with for years, and that is our number one partner. These other, the next three partners are the ones that we've listed in the grant, and they're closely tied to this effort and the Food Business Center. We have the Indian Land Trust Fund. They are experts in regulatory and policy issues for recovering Indian land rights. Akiptan is our Native Community Development Financial Institution, and they do educating as well as innovative financing. So they help with business plans and stuff like that. Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, IFAI, is our university partner. They provide tribal governments, producers, and food businesses with educational resources, policy research, strategic analysis. They are also the one heading up our needs assessment right now. And then I just want to put a plug out there. Of course, we cannot forget that our comprehensive ecosystem of partners that help serve Indian agriculture at large, that includes everybody on this webinar and all of the other partners that haven't been mentioned. Next slide. So our vision for how our capacity investment, so they're called Business Builder Awards, our vision for how this will roll out, and of course this is not in stone, it's just what we're picturing at this point, is that we'll be accepting applications on a rolling basis. We'll be taking the non-competitive track, and that means it has to be coupled with our technical assistance. So we will provide assistance with that on how to identify the proper technical assistance and their project concepts. And then we're hoping to have two basic tracks, one of which will build off of existing technical assistance, since we've already got a great, robust network right now. They might have a little bit more experience with some of our programs, and then our more in-depth track where we'll be much more robust technical assistance going into it, since we expect to see a lot of newer applicants. So that's what we're picturing right now, and that is all I have for you.